You ever think about what hides in places we rarely notice? In deserts, along empty beaches, or in the quiet corners of our world, some of the darkest actions of human nature have taken place. These aren't stories from books or movies. These are real crimes, with real victims and killers who vanished without a trace. Tonight we explore some of the most chilling true crime cases where isolation, vulnerability, and a predator's planning created horrors that still affect the people and communities involved. The West Mesa Bone Collector. In 2009, the quiet city of Albuquerque, New Mexico, was shaken to its core when authorities uncovered a grim discovery in the desert west of town. The remains of 11 women buried in shallow graves across a desolate stretch of land known as the West Mesa. Investigators later determined that the victims had gone missing between 2003 and 2005. Most of the women were in their 20s or early 30s. Many struggled with addiction or sex work, living on the margins of society, and that invisibility made them easy prey for a predator who hunted in the shadows. The unidentified killer soon became known as the West Mesa Bone Collector. Evidence at the scene suggested that he had carefully selected his burial sites across more than 30 hectares of desert terrain. Tire marks and disturbed soil hinted at repeated visits, implying the killer had intimate knowledge of the area, perhaps a local who knew the desert's quiet isolation. Over the years, several suspects have been investigated. One of them, Lorenzo Montoya, lived less than 3 miles from the burial site. His background was disturbing. In 1999, he strangled and raped a sex worker, but served only a short sentence. Then in 2006, he murdered a teenage sex worker and was shot and killed by the girl's pimp while trying to dispose of her body. After Montoya's death, the West Mesa murders stopped. Despite this connection, police have never been able to prove he was the bone collector. There were no witnesses, no fingerprints, and no DNA evidence linking him or anyone else to the graves. The official cause of death for the victims was listed as homicide by blunt force or undetermined violence, though the advanced state of decomposition made it nearly impossible to determine the exact method of killing. To this day, the case remains unsolved, one of the darkest mysteries in the American Southwest. For the families of the 11 women, the desert still holds too many secrets, and justice remains just out of reach. Servant girl murders. Between December 1884 and December 1885, the city of Austin, Texas, was terrorized by a series of brutal murders later known as the Servant Girl Murders or the Servant Girl Annihilator case. The killer, whose identity was never discovered, primarily targeted young women, many of them domestic servants, attacking them in their homes as they slept. In total, 8 people were murdered, 7 women and 1 man, while several others were severely injured. The assaults were carried out at night, always with shocking precision and ferocity. The murderer often used an axe or a similar weapon, breaking into homes quietly and vanishing before anyone could respond. In several cases, he dragged the victims' bodies outside after the attack, adding to the horror and mystery surrounding the crimes. Austin, a rapidly growing city at the time, was gripped by fear. The press sensationalized the events, calling the unknown killer the Midnight Assassin. Residents armed themselves, and suspicion spread through the community. Dozens of men were questioned or arrested, including James Phillips, the husband of one of the last victims, though no one was ever definitively convicted. The murders finally stopped when the police offered a reward for information, and local vigilante groups patrolled the streets every evening, heightening security and putting pressure on the killer. One later theory suggested that the murderer might have been a man named Nathan Elgin, a 19-year-old African-American cook, who was killed by police in 1886 after committing another violent assault, but this remains unproven. The murders ended as suddenly as they began, leaving the city haunted by unanswered questions. Today, the servant girl murders are remembered as one of the earliest recorded serial killings in American history. They expose the fears and social tensions of a changing frontier city, highlighting both the vulnerability of working women and the limitations of 19th century law enforcement. The killer's identity remains one of the great unsolved mysteries of American true crime. Long Island serial killer. Between about 2010 and 2011, the area of Gilgo Beach and the nearby woods and marshes on Long Island, New York, became the dumping ground for the remains of at least 10 individuals in what eventually became known as the Long Island serial killer case, also called the Craigslist Ripper. The victims were predominantly women involved in sex work and/or struggling with addiction, advertising themselves through platforms such as Craigslist. The killer's modus operandi revealed extreme brutality. Some victims were dismembered, wrapped in burlap or placed in bags, and then left in remote locations along the Ocean Parkway corridor. Even though several bodies were discovered within a short span of time, law enforcement investigations initially stalled. On July 13, 2023, a suspect was arrested in Manhattan. He was Rex Heuermann, a New York architect born in 1964. Police called the arrest a major step forward. Investigators explained that they had matched DNA from a pizza Heuermann had eaten with genetic material found on the remains of several victims. Heuermann denied the triple murder charges against him. Following his arrest, his wife, an Icelander, filed for divorce after 27 years of marriage. DNA from her was also found on some of the victims, but she had been traveling during the murders, and authorities believe her DNA was transferred to the victims by her husband. Since June 6, 2024, Heuermann has been charged with the murder of 6 women. The 4 Gilgo 4 victims, Megan, Melissa, Amber, and Maureen, plus Jessica T. and Sandra C. He is also under investigation for the death of Valerie M. in 2000. The Long Island serial killer case stands as a grim example of methodical predation against vulnerable women and highlights systemic failures, as the victims' lives were often overlooked, slowing down efforts for justice. 3 stories separated by time and geography, but united by darkness, by lives stolen, and by the chilling reality that monsters exist in the shadows of our everyday world. These are the true crimes that remind us, sometimes the most terrifying tales are not fiction. They are real, they happened, and they continue to haunt us. If you think about the world we live in, the quiet streets, the empty deserts, the isolated beaches, it's impossible not to wonder who walks among us unnoticed, who hides behind a friendly smile, a mundane job, or a locked door? And more importantly, could you spot them before it's too late? Thank you for listening, but remember, the shadows aren't always behind you. Sometimes they're closer than you think. If you enjoyed this video, please like this video and subscribe to the channel, because only then can we keep bringing you more true crime stories in the future. Thank you for watching.